The weaving of dawns. The sky above Kelithra was a mosaic of shifting gold and emerald, veined with distant clouds like rivers cutting through a living map. James Orwell saw none of its beauty, only the warning lights that screamed across his shuttle's console and the flicker of flames licking at the cracked view screen. He gritted his teeth, wrestling the controls as the ground spiraled up to meet him. The ship bucked and groaned around him, a metal coffin shuddering through layers of alien atmosphere. Trees, if you could call them trees, those towering glowing pillars, blurred past, impossibly tall and blue-green, their canopies interwoven like the roof of a cathedral. James fought for breath. There was a sharp metallic tang in the air, and a weight pressing on his chest that felt heavier than gravity. "Come on," he muttered. "Just a little further." The port thruster failed with a shriek. The shuttle spun sideways, scraped the edge of a luminous trunk, and slammed into the soft, spongy earth with a bone-rattling crash. Silence followed, thick and absolute, broken only by the ticking of cooling metal and the faint, musical chime of leaves disturbed high above. James lay still, heart pounding, every muscle braced for pain. Miraculously, he was alive, battered, bruised, but breathing. He forced himself upright, blinking as the world came into focus. Shafts of filtered sunlight danced through the canopy, painting the forest floor in shifting mosaics of green and gold. The air was humid, fragrant with unfamiliar flowers and something sweet, almost like honey. He reached for the emergency kit, mind racing. No comms, no way to signal the fleet, no guarantee he wasn't already being watched. James glanced around, senses prickling. The trees felt alive, not just living, but aware, their faint glow pulsing in time with something deep and ancient. A movement in the undergrowth caught his eye. He froze, hand tightening on the kit. There, something small, quick, and iridescent slipped between the shadows. A pair of bright, curious eyes regarded him from behind a curtain of hanging vines. He swallowed, voice rough. "Easy. I'm not here to hurt you." The forest seemed to hold its breath. The eyes blinked, and then, just as suddenly, they vanished, leaving James alone with the ruins of his ship and the impossible world that waited beyond. James's muscles ached as he stepped out of the ruined shuttle. His boots sank into the mossy ground, the spongy texture muffling each movement. He scanned the forest. Luminspires stretched endlessly in every direction, their trunks glowing faintly where the light touched them. Somewhere high above, a breeze set thousands of leaves to chiming, and the sound was so strange, so musical, that it made his skin prickle. He checked his gear, emergency pack, water, a battered multi-tool. The rest was useless, lost in the crash, or too heavy to carry. He took a steadying breath and set off in the direction he'd seen the eyes, curiosity and necessity warring in his mind. Each step brought new wonders. Flowers, bright as lanterns, unfurled as he passed, releasing sweet scents into the air. Small creatures darted between roots, their forms half glimpsed. Some glowed with inner light, others changed color to match the moss. The forest was alive, not just with sound, but with something deeper, a rhythm he could almost feel in his bones. Suddenly, a high, trilling yowl split the quiet. James froze. It came again, urgent, rising in pitch, echoing through the trees. He crouched, moving toward the sound with careful, deliberate steps. In a clearing ahead, he glimpsed a scene that made him forget his aches. A young alien girl, her skin a soft, luminous green, was crouched beside a creature unlike any he'd seen. The animal was larger than a cat, winged and horned, with a magnificent fluffy tail and fur that shimmered with every color of the forest. The girl cried out, fear and determination on her face, as she tried to shield her pet from the tangle of thorny vines that had ensnared one of its wings. James hesitated only a moment. "Hey!" he called, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. The girl startled, her wide leaf-green eyes meeting his. The creature hissed, a low musical sound, but didn't flee. James knelt, keeping his movements slow and open. "I can help," he said softly. "It's okay, I promise." For a long moment, the girl simply stared. Then, with a trembling hand, she pushed a strand of dark hair behind her pointed ear and nodded, just once. James inched forward. The creature watched him warily, but as he spoke in gentle tones, it relaxed enough to let him approach. He worked quickly, using his multi-tool to cut the vines away from the creature's wing. The animal tensed and whimpered, but when James freed it, a soft glow pulsed along its horns and the wounds beneath the fur began to close, as if by magic. The girl gasped, relief and gratitude flooding her face. She spoke, a melodic string of syllables James didn't understand. But her meaning was clear when she reached out and clasped his hand in both of hers, her golden-flecked eyes shining with tears. James managed a shaky smile. "You're welcome," he said, as the forest, for the first time since his arrival, seemed to exhale around him. The girl knelt beside her pet, murmuring softly as Nisha stretched out her newly freed wing. The glade-wing felid shook itself, iridescent fur rippling, and then, remarkably, unfurled its wings to their full, feathered span. Its horns glowed with gentle light, and it nudged James's hand with a surprisingly warm, rough nose. James let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. "You're welcome too, big guy," he said, risking a tentative scratch behind Nisha's ear. Nisha's eyes closed in delighted approval, and a musical purr vibrated through the clearing, the sound so soothing that James's aches seemed to fade away. The girl watched him closely, curiosity overtaking her fear. She spoke again, her language lilting, filled with harmonies and tones James couldn't pass. When he shook his head, apologetic, she pointed at herself and clearly said, "Joanna." Then she placed a gentle hand on her pet's head. "Nisha," James smiled, repeating the names. "Joanna, Nisha." He pressed a hand to his own chest. "James." Joanna's eyes sparkled. She tried the name, James, and grinned at her own effort. Nisha chirped, tail swishing like a banner. A soft rustle came from the shadows at the edge of the clearing. Joanna's ears flicked toward the sound, and she stiffened, her expression shifting from curiosity to caution. Nisha tensed as well, placing herself protectively between Joanna and the undergrowth. James rose slowly, standing beside them. Out of the dappled shadows stepped a woman, tall, regal, her skin a deeper mossy green, scales glimmering along her cheekbones and forehead. Her golden amber eyes were sharp and assessing, her long leaf-decorated hair catching the filtered light. She wore a garment that seemed to flow from her skin itself, decorated with beads and woven vines. She took in the scene with a single sweeping gaze, James, the still trembling Joanna, and Nisha's outstretched wings. For a heartbeat no one spoke. The air held an electric charge, as if the forest itself was listening. James raised both hands, voice steady but low. "I'm not here to hurt anyone. I crashed. I just wanted to help." The woman's eyes lingered on Joanna, searching for signs of distress. When her daughter nodded, relief and trust mingling in her expression, the woman relaxed. Slightly, she spoke, her voice clear and resonant, her tone carrying both authority and a cautious welcome. Joanna hurried to her mother's side, speaking quickly. The woman's gaze softened, and she nodded once at James. "Thank you," she said, her accent thick but words unmistakable. "You saved my child." James nodded, feeling the reality of his situation settle over him. He was far from home, among strangers on a world that seemed to pulse with life and secrets. But as Joanna and Nisha drew closer, and Resius offered him a measured, grateful smile, he sensed, for the first time since the crash, that he might just have a place here, for however long fate allowed it. The tension in the clearing eased, replaced by a cautious curiosity. Resius studied James with a keen, appraising look, then glanced at the ruined shuttle visible through the trees. She exchanged a few quiet words with Joanna, whose excitement now bubbled over her earlier fear. Nisha, tail high, padded circles around James and Joanna, occasionally glancing skyward as if keeping watch for danger. Resius gestured for James to follow. Joanna took his hand, small, cool and oddly reassuring, and led him along a winding path through the Luminspire grove. The ground was springy underfoot, glowing faintly with every step. Sunlight filtered high above, casting moving mosaics of color and shadow as the leaves chimed softly in the breeze. James glanced back at his wrecked shuttle, a pang of loss hitting him. He'd survived other crashes, but never on a world like this. Here, the air felt thick with meaning. Every tree seemed to watch, every root and petal humming with hidden memory. As they walked, James tried to memorize every detail. The trees soared higher than any he'd ever seen, their trunks cool and glassy, their bark veined with faint light. Delicate vines hung from branches, some tipped with glowing flowers that winked as the group passed. Small creatures darted in the undergrowth, and once a flock of iridescent birds burst upward, their wings scattering motes of golden dust into the air. Juina pointed out things in her musical language, naming plants and animals as Nisha bounded ahead, occasionally circling back with a playful chirp. James could only respond with nods and smiles, but a rhythm of trust was forming. Juina's laughter, Nisha's purring, and Resius's steady, protective presence. After a time, the ground sloped upward and the trees seemed to part, revealing Valereach, a city grown, not built, from the very forest itself. Homes spiraled around Luminspire trunks or hung suspended between branches on living bridges of woven vines. Platforms glowed with soft bioluminescence, and high above, walkways crisscrossed the canopy like threads in a living tapestry. Music drifted from somewhere, a choir of distant voices, wind through leaves, the chime and hum of the forest itself. Resius led James and Juina beneath an arching route into a wide, open gathering space. People paused at their arrival, eyes wide as they took in the stranger among them. Juina squeezed James's hand, her own silent promise that he wasn't alone. Resius spoke with a pair of elders seated on a platform woven from roots and moss. Their eyes were ancient, their faces marked with generations of memory-etched scales. Soft words were exchanged, glances cast James's way, and then a gentle nod. The elders beckoned him forward. James stepped into the circle of their gaze, heart pounding. He felt exposed, judged, and yet, somehow, welcomed. The air around him seemed to pulse with emotion, curiosity, caution, and something deeper, a thread of hope, weaving itself through the dawn-lit air. As twilight deepened, Valereach glowed with life. Luminspires pulsed gently from within, their light casting shifting patterns over walkways and homes. The air was thick with the scent of moss and distant flowers, and music, a blend of voices, chimes, and humming leaves, rose and fell like a living lullaby. James sat quietly on a woven platform outside Resius and Juina's home. His jacket, battered from the crash, was draped beside him to dry. He watched the city's heart beat, families gathering, children darting along glowing routes, elders singing softly as the forest darkened. Every so often, someone would glance his way, some with fear, some with fascination, but most with a respectful distance. Juina appeared, Nisha gliding down from a nearby branch to land beside her with a soft thump and a rustle of wings. She smiled shyly and offered James a small bowl of food, something like fruit, but warm and sweet and faintly spicy. He took it with a grateful nod. She sat beside him, curling her legs underneath herself in a way that reminded him, suddenly, that she was still just a child, even here, in a place that felt both ancient and new. Nisha pressed close, resting her head in Juina's lap, tail sweeping contentedly along the platform. James tried a bite. The flavor burst on his tongue, strange, but not unpleasant. He grinned. "Thank you, Juina." She giggled at the sound of her name and mimicked his thank you, her accent thick but her delight obvious. She pointed skyward, naming the moons, then to the distant canopy, as if trying to share every secret of her world at once. Resius emerged, her presence dignified but not unkind. She sat on James's other side, folding her hands in her lap. In halting common she spoke, "Juina likes you." "Nisha too." Her golden eyes searched his face, weighing trust against caution. "You are welcome for now, but you must be careful. Many here fear what is different." James nodded, understanding more than just the words. "I don't want to cause trouble. I only want to help, if I can." For a moment Resius was silent, her gaze fixed on the flickering lights of Valereach. Then she nodded, a slow, deliberate gesture. "We will see." The three sat together in the gathering dusk, alien, human, and Gladuing Felid, watching as the city's bioluminescence painted new constellations in the air around them. For James, the ache of loneliness faded, replaced by the quiet hope that, here on Kelithra, he might find not just survival, but belonging. The days that followed settled into a rhythm, both alien and oddly comforting. James woke each morning to the soft chiming of leaves and the gentle warmth of filtered sunlight. Valereach bustled around him, clan members tending to living homes, weaving new walkways from vines, preparing food, and singing in harmonies that seemed to set the very air at ease. Juina became his guide, her shyness melting into giggles as she showed him the wonders of her world. Nisha was never far, gliding between platforms or curling against James's side with a purr that soothed his lingering aches and bruises. The Gladuing Felid's healing aura became a small miracle. His wounds closed faster than they should, and when nightmares of the crash woke him, Nisha's presence brought calm. Resius watched all of this with measured eyes. She questioned James about his past, about the world he came from, about why he had fallen from the sky. In return, she taught him the basics of her language, words for light, for food, for friend. She spoke of the Luminspires, of memory and the weaving of dawns, the great ritual that bound their people to the land and to one another. James learned to help where he could, gathering fruit, mending nets, carrying woven baskets up and down the spiraling paths. The people of Valereach remained cautious, but the sight of Juina and Nisha at his side softened their wariness. Children began to greet him with shy waves. Elders watched him with thoughtful curiosity. One evening, as the air thickened with the scent of blooming flowers and the twin moons rose, Resius approached James on the platform outside their home. She sat beside him, her gaze fixed on the glowing canopy. "It is time," she said quietly. "In 3 dawns, we will hold the weaving. All clans will gather. You must be ready." James nodded, feeling the weight of her words. "What do I need to do?" She held out a small woven pouch. "You must bring a memory, something important. It will be woven into the roots, and the trees will remember you." He turned the pouch over in his hand, thinking of all he had lost, and all he might yet find on this world. That night, James sat with Juina and Nisha, watching Valereach pulse with anticipation. Far off, the elders began their ritual songs, voices rising like wind through the Luminspires. The city glowed brighter than ever, as if the forest itself was waiting, listening and hoping alongside them. 3 dawns later, Valereach awoke before the first light. The entire city thrummed with anticipation, the Luminspire's veins glowing brighter, pulsing in rhythm with the gathering clan's quiet excitement and nervousness. Walkways and platforms filled with people in their finest woven garments, adorned with beads, flowers and shimmering scales that caught the rising sun. The air was thick with the scent of sweet fruit, fresh water, and something electric, like the moment before a summer storm. James stood with Juina and Resius at the edge of the great harmonic hall. The place was alive with music and movement, elders tuning deep-voiced instruments, children weaving flowers into the arching roots, voices harmonizing in the language of the forest. Nisha perched at Juina's side, wings tucked, eyes luminous in the dim light. Resius pressed her hand to James's arm. "Stay close. Listen. Watch." Her voice was soft but firm. He sensed she was trusting him with something sacred. The gathered clans formed a wide circle beneath the central Luminspire, its trunk thicker than a house, its roots woven into an amphitheater that glowed from within. At the heart stood the elders and the memory weavers, each holding a pouch like the one Resius had given James. The ritual began with a low, resonant hum. The elders sang, voices rising and falling in layered chords. The sound made the roots vibrate underfoot, and the leaves chime overhead. One by one, clan members approached the central tree, offering their memory tokens, a scrap of cloth, a carved bead, a feather, a stone. Each was pressed gently into the glowing roots, and each time, the Luminspire's veins flared with color, gold for joy, blue for sorrow, green for hope, scarlet for loss. Juina went before James, clutching a small iridescent feather, one of Nisha's shed during her healing. She placed it in the roots and whispered a wish. The tree responded with a gentle golden light, and Juina smiled through tears. It was James's turn. He stepped forward, the woven pouch heavy in his hand. He thought of Earth, of the home he'd lost, of the fear and loneliness that had nearly overwhelmed him days after the crash. He thought of Juina's courage, Resius's strength, Nisha's healing presence, and the unexpected hope he'd found here among strangers. From the pouch, he drew a small metal pendant, a keepsake from his family, dented but still whole. Kneeling before the Luminspire, he pressed it into the roots. The tree's light shifted, a deep, clear blue threaded with green and gold, colors swirling and pulsing as if the tree was listening, understanding, accepting his story. The song changed, growing sweeter and more powerful. The entire grove shimmered with light and sound. For a moment, James felt something move through him. A warmth, a memory not his own. The sense of belonging that came from being woven into the fabric of this world. Resias's hand found his as the music faded. "You are part of us now," she whispered. As the dawn broke, the city of Valereach glowed brighter than James had ever seen, and for the first time since his crash, he let himself believe in this world, in these people, and in hope. The weaving ended with dawn's light pouring through the canopy, bathing Valereach in shimmering gold and emerald. For a few precious hours, the city was united in joy and remembrance. People embraced, shared stories, and sang new songs that would become part of the collective memory, carried by the roots and the glowing veins of the Luminspires. But as midday approached, a strange unease crept through the forest. The leaves stilled, the wind held its breath. James felt it first as a tightening in his chest, a subtle shift in the air. Nisha's ears flattened, and Joanna clung to her mother's side, her eyes wide and anxious. From the edge of the city, a scout burst into the gathering, breathless with fear. He spoke rapidly in the clan tongue, and the elders' faces darkened. Resias's hand found James's arm, her fingers tense. "What is it?" James whispered. Resias's eyes were hard as stone. "Outsiders, not like you. War comes." A hush fell over the assembly. From the heights above, a strange, mechanical whine cut through the peace, a sound so alien and shrill it made even the Luminspires dim. Black shapes swooped between the trees, small, insectile ships, their hulls emblazoned with the gold and green sigils of fleet sovereign Quital. The invasion had begun. Panic rippled through Valereach. Children were gathered, elders ushered into the roots of the great trees. Warriors armed themselves with blades and woven armor, their faces painted in clan colors. Resias shouted instructions, her voice strong, unyielding, while Joanna held tight to Nisha, trembling but silent. James's mind raced. He saw the invaders' ships circling, their weapons glowing with cold light. He remembered the crash, the loneliness, the sense of being utterly lost. But now, as Valereach braced for war, he felt something new, a surge of responsibility, of belonging. He turned to Resias, meeting her golden eyes. "How can I help?" She did not hesitate. "You know machines, you know war. Come." Together they raced through the city, past families hiding in hollows and warriors gathering on walkways. For the first time, James felt the full weight of being accepted, not just as a guest, but as a part of the clan. Far above, the sky darkened as enemy ships blotted out the sun. The weaving of dawns was over. The time for memory and hope had passed. Now came the time for courage. The first shots came as a hiss of fire through the trees, beams of light slicing through the air, scorching moss and shattering luminous branches. Warriors of Valereach sprang into action, their movements swift and silent, vanishing along bridges and up the trunks of Luminspires. The enemy ships hovered just above the canopy, deploying armored figures on metallic wings who began to descend, weapons in hand. James followed Resias, his mind racing. She led him to a raised platform overlooking the city's edge, where a hastily assembled group of clan leaders and defenders gathered. He recognized the urgency in their eyes, the same fear and determination he'd seen before every battle on distant worlds. "We need to buy time," Resias said, her tone fierce. "The elders and children must reach the deep hollows. Can you disable their machines?" James nodded, scanning the battlefield. "If I can get close enough, I'll need tools. Anything metal, wiring, blades." A young warrior handed him a toolkit cobbled together from scavenged parts and forest-grown materials. James's hands were steady as he checked the contents. A crude soldering iron, a set of pliers, a handful of sharp, flexible wires. Not perfect, but enough. Joanna appeared at his side. Nisha pressed close. The girl's eyes were huge with worry, but she tried to smile. "Safe?" she asked quietly. James knelt, ruffling her hair. "I'll come back, I promise." Nisha nuzzled his hand, her horns glowing softly, as if lending him strength. Resias touched his shoulder. "Go, I trust you." James slipped into the shadowed undergrowth, moving among the roots and glowing fungi. He watched as enemy soldiers landed, moving in tight formation, alien, armored, faces hidden behind mirrored masks. He caught a glimpse of Quital himself, tall and imposing, striding through the chaos with a golden war mask gleaming in the dim light. With a deep breath, James crept toward the nearest ship. He dodged through vines and fallen branches, heart hammering in his chest. He reached the landing strut, ducking under the hull as enemy voices barked orders above him. With practiced hands, he opened a panel and began to work. Sparks flew as he sliced a wire, then another. He worked quickly, sweat beading on his brow. The ship's lights flickered, alarms blaring. Above, confused shouts erupted as the ship lurched, losing stability and tilting dangerously. James scrambled back into cover just as the vessel crashed through the branches, scattering enemy troops and blocking their advance. Cheers rose from the Vale-Reach defenders. The tide for a moment had shifted, but then came a scream, a sound sharp with terror. James's blood ran cold. He turned just in time to see Juwina, clutching Nisha, standing frozen as two armored invaders closed in on her. Without thinking, James ran. He reached them as one soldier raised a weapon. James tackled the figure, wrestling the weapon away. The other invader swung at him, but Nisha leapt, wings flaring, and knocked the soldier aside with a furious roar. James grabbed Juwina, pulling her close as Nisha stood guard, eyes blazing with protective light. The invaders retreated, regrouping under Quital's command. Resius appeared moments later, breathless and wild-eyed. She swept Juwina and Nisha into her arms, fierce relief flooding her face. Then she looked at James, gratitude and fear mingling in her golden gaze. The battle was not over, but in that moment, as the defenders rallied and the enemy faltered, James knew he was fighting for more than survival. He was fighting for family. Smoke drifted through the Luminspire groves as the battle raged on. Shouts, the clash of metal, and the eerie hum of enemy weapons echoed through Vale-Reach. James, bruised and breathless, stuck close to Resius, Juwina, and Nisha as the defenders regrouped beneath the glowing trees. Quital's forces pressed deeper, their discipline and advanced tech carving a brutal path toward the heart of the city. But Vale-Reach's warriors fought with all the cunning of their world, using the forest itself as shield and weapon, setting traps with living vines, luring invaders into shadowed hollows where roots shifted and the very earth seemed to resist the enemy's advance. Resius's voice rang out, rallying her people. Hold the roots, protect the elders. Her presence was a beacon, her scales shimmering, her eyes aflame with unyielding resolve. James worked furiously, sabotaging another enemy drone with a makeshift explosive, the blast scattering metal and sending two soldiers tumbling. He saw Juwina and Nisha huddled with other children in a root hollow, the glade-dewing Felid's wings spread wide in a shield of shimmering fur and light. Suddenly, the invaders changed tactics. Quital himself strode into the clearing, towering and terrible in his ornate armor, his golden facial markings gleaming. He raised a strange device and spoke, his voice reverberating through amplified speakers, harsh and cold in the Vale-Reach dusk. Surrender the outsider, and I will spare your city. Quital's eyes locked on James, his intent unmistakable. A hush fell. All eyes turned to James, some in fear, some in silent apology, and many with desperate hope. James stepped forward, battered but unbowed. You want me, Quital? Here I am, he shouted, but you'll never break them, not while I stand with them. Quital laughed, a sound like grinding stone. You are alone. No, Resius said, stepping beside James, her voice ringing clear. He is one of us. Juwina broke from the crowd, Nisha at her side, and pressed against James's leg. Family, she said, her voice small but certain. The defenders rallied, forming a wall of shields and bodies around James and his new family. Quital's face twisted with fury. He raised his weapon. Then all of you will fall. The battle erupted anew, more savage and desperate than before. Quital himself charged the line, scattering defenders with brute force. James fought at Resius's side, blocking a blow meant for her with a scavenged shield. Juwina clung to Nisha, who unleashed a shimmering wave of healing light that soothed wounds and banished fear among the clan. But the cost was high. Friends fell. The grove echoed with cries of pain and grief. For a moment it seemed the invaders' might would overwhelm the city. Then, above the chaos, a new sound split the sky, a deep, resonant rumble and the dazzling sweep of lights as a fleet of human ships descended through the clouds. Fleet Captain Angel Ponder's voice boomed across the battlefield. "This world is under the protection of the United Terran Coalition. Stand down or face our wrath." The invaders hesitated. Quital turned, eyes blazing, as the sky filled with dropships and human soldiers in gleaming armor, weapons trained on the enemy. The defenders of Valereach surged forward, hope renewed. James locked eyes with Resius, and together, with their people and their human allies, they pressed the attack. And for the first time since the dawn, the battle turned. The battle reached its fever pitch as the Terran soldiers joined the fray, their disciplined formations and advanced weaponry turning the tide against Quital's forces. Human and clan warriors fought side by side, their bond forged in urgency and desperation. Luminspires lit the battlefield with pulses of gold and green, echoing the hope and fear surging through Valereach. Quital, enraged by the sudden reversal, waded into the thick of the defenders, scattering them with every sweep of his armored arms. His golden eyes found James, and with a guttural roar, he charged. James barely dodged a crushing blow, feeling the air shudder with the force of Quital's rage. Resius leapt between them, her movements swift and sure. She slashed at Quital with a blade of woven bone, drawing a line of iridescent blood across his armored thigh. He spun, backhanding her with brutal strength. Resius staggered, but James caught her, steadying her as Juina and Nisha cried out from behind the shield wall. "You cannot win!" Quital thundered, sweeping his weapon in a wide arc that drove back the defenders. "This world will kneel," James's mind raced. He remembered the sabotage, the weak points he'd found in the enemy tech. He signaled to a nearby Terran Marine, who tossed him an explosive charge. James armed it, ducked beneath Quital's next blow, and jammed the device into a seam in the warlord's armor. "Now!" he shouted. Resius dragged James clear as the charge detonated with a brilliant flash. Quital roared in pain, the golden markings on his face flickering as he staggered to one knee. The defenders surged forward, Valereach warriors, Terran Marines, and even the children and elders, led by the Memory Weavers chanting their ancient songs. Quital tried to rise, but Nisha darted in, wings glowing, and unleashed a shimmering wave of healing light, not to help, but to overwhelm Quital's senses with the memories and pain of the city. He howled, clutching at his head as the forest itself seemed to rise against him. Fleet Captain Angel Ponder strode onto the field, her presence radiating command. "Surrender, Sovereign, or you will not leave this world alive." Defeated, battered, and surrounded, Quital let his weapon fall. His remaining forces broke and fled into the woods, pursued and captured by the united defenders. A hush settled over Valereach as the last sounds of battle faded. The city was battered but standing, its people bruised but unbroken. The Luminspires pulsed with a new light, victory, but also mourning for those lost. James knelt in the moss, holding Resius as Juina and Nisha ran to his side. Angel Ponder approached, offering a hand to her fellow human, her eyes soft with relief and respect. "You did well, Orwell," she said quietly. "You found something worth fighting for." As the clan gathered in the Harmonic Hall, beneath the great tree that held their memories and hopes, James looked around at his new family and the world he had come to love. There was pain, and there would be grief. But in the dawn that followed, there was also healing, and the promise of a future woven together. Human and alien, scarred but stronger, beneath the singing canopy of Kelithra. As the sun rose over the recovering city, Valereach shimmered with new life and quiet sorrow. The Luminspires cast gentle light on the wounded and the weary, their veins now threaded with mournful blues and hopeful greens. The air was heavy with memory of the fallen, of the fear and courage that had passed through the roots and branches during the long, harrowing night. In the days that followed, Terran and clan healers worked side by side. Valereach's people honored their lost with ritual song, weaving mementos and whispered hopes into the roots of the great trees. Children who once hid now played beneath the arches, watched over by Nisha, who had become a symbol of resilience and healing for all. James found himself at the heart of the rebuilding. He worked alongside Resius, their hands often touching as they mended walkways or planted new saplings. They spoke more easily now, their languages blending in smiles and quiet laughter. Resius's eyes, once wary, now held warmth and a fierce pride, not just for her people, but for the man who had stood beside them. Juina took James's hand as they walked the city's edge, Nisha bounding ahead, wings flashing in the morning light. "Family," she said, looking up at him, her eyes shining. "You stay?" James knelt, meeting her gaze. "If you'll have me, I'd like nothing more." Fleet Captain Angel Ponder prepared her fleet to depart, the threat gone for now. Before she left, she found James on a sunlit platform, the city's music drifting around them. "You could come home," she said quietly. James looked out at Valereach, at Resius and Juina, at Nisha curled in a patch of sun. He shook his head, a gentle smile on his lips. "I am home." Ponder nodded, understanding, and clasped his hand in farewell. "Be well, James. Keep them safe." The morning of the next weaving dawned bright and clear. The people of Valereach, human and alien, young and old, gathered beneath the Luminspires. This time, James stood beside Resius and Juina, a token of memory in his hand, ready to add his story to the living roots of Kelithra. As the ritual began, voices rose, leaves chimed, and the city's scars softened beneath the gentle light. The weaving of dawns was not just a ceremony of remembrance, but a promise that from grief, new hope would always grow. That family could be chosen and cherished, that even in the darkest night, the dawn would return, brighter and stronger than before. And as the first rays of sunlight broke through the canopy, James Orwell, once a stranger, stood with his new family beneath the singing trees, his heart finally at peace. Juina sat high in the branches of a Luminspire, Nisha curled close, her warm fur pressed against Juina's side. Far below, the voices of her people and the human visitors drifted up like a soft current, mingling with the chime of leaves and the sunlit hum of life. The scars of battle were fading. Some walkways still bore scorch marks, and some faces still held shadows, but laughter was slowly returning to Valereach. She traced her fingers along Nisha's horns, feeling the gentle pulse of light that always soothed her fears. Down below, she saw her mother and James tending a new sapling together, their hands side by side in the rich, dark earth. Resius looked up and smiled, her eyes finding Juina easily through the dapples of light. Juina's heart lifted. She remembered the terror and sadness, the way Nisha had shielded her, the way James had come running, the song of the weaving that had carried her sorrow into the roots of the world. But now, each memory felt softer, less sharp. She had learned that even after loss, love could grow back stronger, and that family could be made from courage and kindness as much as from blood. Nisha purred, the sound rumbling into Juina's bones. She closed her eyes, imagining the roots below her, thick with stories and hope, weaving her life together with everyone she loved. When she opened her eyes, the city was bright and alive. She saw the future unfolding, new games, new songs, new friends from worlds she'd never imagined. But most of all, she saw her place in this story, her heart woven into the dawn. Juina hugged Nisha close and called down to her mother and James, her voice ringing like a bell through the trees, full of joy and promise for all the days to come.